Welcome to the Moody's Tire and Auto Football Extra.
Visit us at Moody's Tire for all your tire and automotive needs.
Stop by and see us at 1600 Columbia Avenue.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome into the Week 10 edition of Moody's Football Extra. I'm Joe Williams, the sports editor of the Williamson Herald, along with longtime local sports expert Maurice Patton. And, partner, it's down to the nitty-gritty. Here we go. It's Week 10. When this night is over Friday night, there are going to be some kids who won't be playing any more football.
And this is always a sad time of year for that very reason. A lot of seniors that have put a lot of time and effort and energy in, that this will be it for them.
Big games are across the board this week in Williamson County, too. Let's start with what is absolutely the biggest, the Battle of Franklin. Now, Maurice, when you grew up here, there was Franklin High School. There was no Centennial. This is something that's only about 14, 15 years old and really didn't become a rivalry until Brian Rector came in a couple of years ago and the Cougars got their first win against Franklin. Donnie Webb and the Rebels paid them back last year, so this is kind of the rubber game, and it ought to be a great one.
It's become a rivalry, and it's become a rivalry par excellence, I do believe, and I think this game will absolutely live up to the hype. You've got a couple of teams that have been right at the top of this district all year long, 3 losses between them, 2 of those to Ravenwood, who is obviously,
they're the champs.
They're the class of this District 11 AAA, but, this ought to be a great ball game.
You come in with a contest that has a Joe Critchlow, a Bryce Milam, a Malik Grimes, Garrison Matthews, and I'm missing one or two on that Franklin side offensively, going up against a team that will run you to death with Deion Sanders and a couple of other kids, and they may have the benefit this week. There's a couple of big keys to Franklin's defense who are not going to be there. Josh Philby and Zach Schlussman.
Yeah, Josh unfortunately had an incident right at the start of that Independence game and got excused early, and we'll miss this one as well. And I'm not sure what the situation is with Zach, but obviously Franklin has really done a good job of stopping people. And as you mentioned Deion Sanders, Tyrell Dodson's also done a great job for Centennial in the running game. And when you're missing a Josh Philby up front, that can't help Franklin's defensive efforts, I don't think. And this might turn out to be one of those where somebody's got to outscore somebody, and that's going to put it on Centennial's offense, both in the running game, and they may have to hit some plays in the passing game with Emmanuel Hall as well. I think it's going to be a great crowd for a great game. Get here early, like you said. The construction, if you've not been over on this side of town this year, it's a pain. There's no way around it. As a Centennial parent, it's a pain getting around this campus right now, and it's one of those things that's going to pay off here in a few more weeks. But for right now, it's really tough getting around here. Get here early.
Get here early and get prepared for a great one. Now, 2 other games involving county schools. Both of these guys are a Division II situation where I don't want to say it's a little easier to make the playoffs, but it's a little easier to make the playoffs, but it may be tougher once you get there in some cases. BGA looking for a regional title. They go to FRA up in Nashville. Both of these teams undefeated in that region. Boy, the Wildcats would like to bring home a big trophy.
And BGA beat them last year down here in Franklin 42-7. A couple of really solid ball clubs, and I think with them being so close together, it won't be the type crowd that you'll have here for Franklin Centennial, but I think you'll have a good crowd, and I think you'll have a great ball game over there as well.
That crowd's going to be big, and you also know there'll be one out on Highway 100 when Brentwood Academy gets to go visit Ensworth for the first time since they got Brentwood would tell you upset in the playoffs last year.
Well, yeah, they had just beaten Ensworth 36-10 in the final game of the regular season, which is right where we sit now. They go over there and they lose 21-12 in the semifinals, and they felt like they were really primed to finally get back to the state, first time in about 5 or 6 years. So I think Brentwood Academy feels like they've got a little something to prove in this ball game. Ensworth has continued to play better since that debacle that they had down in McCallie a few weeks ago. And talked to Ricky Bowers a couple of days ago, and he feels like they played their best game against Baylor last week in 31-7. Yeah, so they feel like they're really clicking on both sides of the ball right now, and obviously Brentwood Academy is as well. So another great one.
That's one of those we call in the old days an absolute guaranteed slobber knocker. If you know what that is, go to the game and find out. And what we normally call Class 2A, although it's 3 and 4 for football reasons, Maurice, a couple of important games. You've got first Spring Hill at Page on Thursday night. Now, the Patriots have pretty well guaranteed themselves a spot in the playoffs, but boy, it would be nice to go in to that first week with another victory under your belt.
Absolutely. You want to take some momentum in when you can, and this should be an opportunity for Page to build up some momentum against the Spring Hill team. It's kind of been up and down. Played Columbia really tough last week, but this should be a game, like you said, where Page can build some confidence, build some momentum heading into the 4A playoffs for them.
Yeah, and in 3A playoff-wise, it's Fairview. They're going to be on the road at number 1 Waverly in District 11 AA, and this is really kind of a toss salad situation. Normally, it's Waverly having to fight a number 1 or a number 2 Fairview for an opportunity to get to go to the playoffs.
Yeah, Waverly's done a really great job. I think they've got a new coach over there,
coach.
And they've opened it up on offense. They've been able to put up a lot of points on a lot of folks. Fairview, again, they've battled injuries. They've kind of gotten themselves back to where we kind of expected them to be. It's going to rest again, I think, on Hunter Zimmerman, because they may have to score with Waverly in this one. And so he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and look for him to have a big game regardless of how it goes, because they're going to have to score a bunch.
Well, one way or another, Chris Hughes is going to find a way to put points on that scoreboard. That's just what he does.
Absolutely. He has done a great job out there. It's been really, really underrated, I think. Guy I played softball with years and years ago. I remember when he got that job, and I called him and I said, "They're letting you coach football?" But he's a great guy, and he's done a great job. A graduate of Fairview, and I think it really means a lot to him. And those kids, you hear the phrase, would run through a wall for him, but I literally believe they would, because they feel like he's one of them. And I think that's just had so much to do with what they've been able to get done here over the last few years.
Makes a heck of a difference. Well, our final set of games we're looking at this week on the Moody's Football Extra, a couple of 6A, I guess they are this year. One, anyway, is going to wind up in that Super 6 group next year. But let's start with Brentwood at Independence. And if there is a more disappointed coach in this country, you'd be hard-pressed to find one that's more disappointed than Scott Blade. 4 times this year, they built up big leads and just couldn't hold on to them. And then last week, the overtime loss of Franklin.
That was a tough one. That's got to be right there with the Blackman loss a few weeks ago in terms of tough losses. They're up 20-3 and really controlling things. And talking to Donnie Webb after that game, he's like, if we can get it down to 10 by halftime, we're in pretty good shape. Well, not only did they get it down to 10, they got it down to 3 because they got another touchdown right there before the half. It's 2017. Momentum has switched, and Independence never really could get it back. And it's unfortunate because they've got a heck of an offense.
And their defense is not that bad. It just doesn't seem to hold.
Yeah, and they've put up points. Again, we've talked about Andrew Bunch here a few times. He had another great game. Nate Johnson is continuing to come along at receiver, and Seth Huner at the other side. Dom Childress, the Navy commitment. That kid gets it done, I tell you. But defensively, they've just not been able to put 4 quarters together. And like you said, that's got to be disappointing for Scott Blade and that bunch over there. And that's something that they're going to have to build on here over the offseason. Hopefully that offseason doesn't begin too quickly for them.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, right now they're in the playoffs, but Mo, you got to know that the guys up at Brentwood who struggled this year, just a couple of wins, would love to play the spoiler on this one, get that big win, give them momentum to carry over into next year, and to keep their county rival out of the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you get to the point that Brentwood is at right now, that's kind of what you live for. They know that this is it for them this Friday night. And if they can throw a monkey wrench in somebody else's plans, and, hey, they've accomplished something. So I'm sure that's what Mike Woodward and that coaching staff has been drilling on them about this week is let's screw it up for somebody else.
Yeah. But if Independence makes it in, as we think they will, there'll be 8 out of the 10 teams in the county that will be in the TSSAA playoffs that start next week. Our final game to look at, obvious which way these two teams are going to wind up going. Ravenwood, undefeated, 9-0, the District 11 AAA champions, will be at home against Summit, the young team out of Spring Hill. Who's still trying to get that first win on the board, got a late start. The Spartans have been decimated by injuries all year long, and it's not little bumps and bruises. It's been season-ending injuries that have really just done a number on their plans.
Exactly, and when you're trying to get a program started, that's the last thing that you can afford, and it's really been tough for them to get it rolling. New coach, small from a numbers standpoint, in a really tough district. It's been a tough go for Summit, and it's not going to be any easier Friday night. Ravenwood really smells that first ever 10-0 in the program history, and I don't see any way they don't get it, really. They're playing really well right now, and Summit's just in a bad spot, I think, right here.
Ravenwood has been kind of a machine. The interesting thing will be, as a district champion, they obviously are automatically qualified. The question becomes, who do they face in the first round? And I talked to Will Hester, the coach of Ravenwood, earlier this week, and he just shook his head and smiled and said, I don't know.
Yeah, no idea. And fortunately, this is the last year that we'll have to deal with this playoff system. From here, you get back to a situation where people will know, well, if we do this, then this happens, and if we do this, we go here, or if we do this, they come here, or however. And I think coaches, fans, media, everybody's going to like that a whole lot better.
Oh, yeah. I tell you what, and you can follow along what's going on Friday night as we get to the point of Saturday trying to figure this thing out. You can follow us on Twitter at WH Sports, or you, of course, can keep hitting the old website, www.williamsonherald.com, all Friday night and early Saturday morning to get complete results. And Saturday, as soon as we know where everybody's going, we'll get it up there, but that could be as early as 9 o'clock. It could be as late as 2:30 last year.
It could be as late as Sunday morning.
Well, it could be, yeah. Last year their website crashed. They got so much interest.
Well, there's a lot of interest, and when nobody knows and everybody wants to know, it kind of creates that type thing. And hopefully, and I don't want it to sound like I'm slamming the TSSAA.
Oh, no.
They're just doing the best they can with a bad plan. But we did have a situation a couple of years ago where a team got in and then got pulled out. So just because you're in on Saturday morning doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in come Friday. But hopefully they will have that all ironed out.
Well, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Moody's Football Extra from Reese Patton and our man Charles Pulliam. Taking care of things behind the scenes, I'm Joe Williams. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you for the first week of the playoffs next week.